Hey all, welcome to the Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. I am Laura from Unapologetically Me, and I have with me Richard from the Skeptic Takeout. Today, we are going to be discussing luck. So grab your English tea or your raspberry mocha and join us as we talk, with any luck, about that invisible driving force that helps you make the game winning goal or find your keys just in time to miss all of the stoplights and make it to work on time despite leaving 5 minutes late. This is episode 54 Luck. So I suspect we will have quite a bit to say about luck. But to start, what is your sort of generalized concept of what luck even is?
I don't know. I don't even know what luck is supposed to be. I think luck is. I think I've had a different opinion of luck as not from a personal perspective, but what I consider it to be as I've grown older. Because when I was young, it was just a case of, oh, that was lucky. It was just kind of thrown into general conversation. Oh, like that tactical nuclear missile missed your head. That was very fortunate. you know,
Right.
just like kind of stuff like that, and like you'd fall over and break your arm, but not get run over by the car that was coming down the road at the same time. Oh, you were very lucky there.
Lucky to have survived this, or yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was kind of the earliest kind of thing of luck. But then when I started like studying Eastern religions and things, and especially the Chinese culture, they have
Oh
a
yeah.
completely different concept of luck, and it's more of a it's more of a I think a driven thing in that culture, in those culture, where it's not just the look of the draw. The look of the draw actually means something and influences things, and you can influence your look by doing certain things, which I suppose is
That's
is
similar to karma then?
yeah, a little bit,
Like
yeah.
it builds
It,
up?
but I mean, karma's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah. No, that one's complicated. But I'm just trying to kind of find
Yeah,
an analogy for your explanation of luck from a Chinese cultural perspective. Do you have like an
yeah.
example?
No, I don't come armed with examples. I didn't think we do research
We do
this
this show
show.
with half of our brains tied behind our backs.
And the other half desperately trying to catch up.
Right. I don't use
No,
my logic half. I use my creative imagination half.
but no, logic is of it. I mean, this is a very good show for a good show to involve skepticism. I think,
Mhm.
which we don't, despite the name of the show, we don't always get chance to do. But I think look is a very it's a subject where you can apply skepticism, because a lot of the times when people think they're being looked at, they're kind of counting the hits and ignoring the misses, aren't they?
Mm.
And you know, like, oh, somebody phoned me up, and I was just about to leave their house, but they phoned me up, and they told me that I'd won 100 quid. I was lucky I didn't leave the house. And well, no, you weren't lucky. The luck had nothing to do with it. You
Like
you
what even
just you That's just
what
bias.
yeah, like what even really is luck? So it to me it's very similar to other kind of spiritual, like when you say like crystals have healing powers. What healing powers? Where are they?
Yeah.
What do they look like? How do you test them? Like it's so super vague. It's sort of one of those like you have to sort of use it in context in order to even know how to use it in context, right? But I don't there's no I mean, obviously you can go to Webster's dictionary and get a definition of luck. Um, but if you were to say, well, what actually is luck? What is it? Like it's something where you have a serendipitous fortunate thing happen, but it was meant to be that way, right? Like so it's very vague and very hazy and very confusing. And it almost makes more sense to say God did it, or God is on my side, or God answered my prayers, because that's a physical, like, even though I don't believe that God exists, there's at least like an a method, right? Like, it may not be a testable method, but there's a what do you call it? Like an agent or a contraption, or there's some sort of explanation, right? Whereas with luck, it's just sort of this sort of ethereal, kind of intangible sort of concept, um, that doesn't have any real application.
Yeah, I got to push back a little bit on the God thing, just, but I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from. I just felt like saying "whoa" there when you
No,
started
I know.
saying
Okay, so let's
that.
talk about that
I
then.
know, I
Like,
know what you meant.
right? It's like,
I've also
oh,
thought of an example of the Chinese thing when they give you lucky
ooh,
money
let's
for
get
your
back to that before we
birthday.
get too far along, because I haven't heard of anything like that. So I'm interested to see what
Yeah,
it's all about.
that you'll get an envelope with money in, lucky money for your birthday, which then obviously gives you more chance to gain more luck because you've got that money, so you can go out and spread it with people. So you know what I mean? It's kind of that's what I was talking about when I said it gives you it like grows and develops because you've got this thing. So
Interesting. Well, that's kind of neat. So in that example,
I'll try and
you
find some information about it for the
the Facebook
post-show
page, yeah.
Facebook group.
So you have an envelope full of money, and that money has been somehow determined to be lucky. And then, so what? When you spend it, you're spreading luck, so that luck will be brought onto you, but you're also spreading luck onto others. Is that how that works?
Kind of, yeah. That's it.
That's
Pretty much.
interesting. Yeah, I'm always curious, like, what makes it lucky? Like, if you have a lucky rabbit foot, or like, I guess it kind
It
of goes
wasn't lucky for
along.
the rabbit.
No, I wonder what people would think, like, if you were to actually ask them, what is contained within it that makes it lucky? What is the actual property that makes it lucky? That to me, like, as a skeptical thinker and as a critical thinker, where I want to know, I think more it's the curious person in me. Like, what makes me skeptical and what brought me out of religion is curiosity, is wanting to know, how does that work? Or, oh, why is that the way it is? Or, if God has these two different things that seem to disagree, or seem to be incompatible, why? Why? How can that be possible? Right? Those kinds of things. I'm curious about the mechanism of luck that would make this envelope of money versus this other envelope of money lucky. Like, this is lucky money and this is just cold hard cash. That's really, really baffling to me. And that extends not just to the Chinese version of luck, but to any version, any culture's version of luck. Like, I just really want to know how it's supposed to work. Like, when you're like, "Oh, you got that particular thing over this one, you're lucky," right? Like, "Oh, you drew that card, or you got this out of I don't know, like a prize pack or whatever. You're lucky." What does that really actually mean? And that's
I think I can give a basic, and I'm not an expert on this, and I don't know if this is a technical thing. This is just me talking. But I think I can give a basic kind of rundown of the mechanism of how luck works, in the form of you're doing something yourself. So, say for example, you carry, let's say, an envelope full of money around with you because you consider it lucky.
Mhm.
You've got that presence of mind, then you're in that mind state that you're going to be lucky. So you're more aware of things around you.
Mhm.
And I think when things happen that you consider positive, it is positive discrimination. You
Yeah.
still discriminate, it's still a bias, but by the same token, then you're applying this thing that I'm carrying in my pocket to this situation that's just happened. So that's the kind of mechanism of how luck works, air
Yeah.
quotes.
So you're saying it's psychological, and I like that. It's a mix of some confirmation bias, but also, what is it called? Like the self-fulfilling prophecy kind of, or just positive mindset. I think that is where luck, I think, has the most sway over people just in general, is your mind can be altered. Your behavior, your experience, your emotions can be altered if you perceive that something is a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to go into a room and they were to be like, "Okay, well, all the microphones, like, you're nervous about singing, right? Okay, well, all the microphones are muted. The judges aren't going to hear you. Just practice in this room, right? And you think nobody's listening. And then you're going to sing very, very well. You're going to sing confidently, and you're going to have really good pitch and good tone and all that other stuff. And the microphones could have been on the whole time, right? And they could have been hearing you sing the whole time. But then they tell you, okay, well, now we're going to switch the microphones on. Now you're live. Now you're going in front of the judges, and that's where you get nervous and maybe. So it's very much, and that might be a bad analogy, but the whole idea is that your mindset is different if you think things are a certain way. And so if you
Yeah,
think you
definitely.
found a lucky penny, now you're gonna start seeing the world through maybe a more optimistic lens, and maybe the more positive things that do happen are gonna catch your attention and reinforce that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and as a musician, I've experienced red light syndrome, as it's called,
Is that yeah.
myself, where you're like they hit record and then you just fucking forget how to play. It's happened. It's happened to
Yeah.
me many on many occasions. Even when I'm recording myself, even if I'm sat in my own studio just recording, that I get that red light syndrome. Then I just forget how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just because I get that nervous about, oh God, I've got to make this a good one. Whereas I can sit down and just play and sound great for hours and hours. I think I sound great for for hours at
Yeah.
a time.
Yeah, and so if someone were to say, and I have that problem as well. I think that's why I use that analogy. But I wonder if I was a little more superstitious or a little bit more flexible with this sort of mystical side of things, if someone were to hand me, say, like a necklace or something that they were to say, like, this is lucky, this will help improve your tone, or whatever, if that alone would also be an agent for change, right? Or you're going into this job interview, um, here, where are these lucky earrings, or hey, may luck be on your side today, or whatever, or like
Yeah.
whatever. um Different cultures initiate luck in different ways, or different talismans might contain luck depending on the culture. But if you really believe that it's going to work, you might be more relaxed during that job interview, or you
Yeah.
might be more confident going out in public, or whatever the case may be, because you decided, and your psychology has been altered because of it. And therefore, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if we're going by that, like what your original explanation was that spurred this conversation, then you'd have to conclude that luck in a psychological way does exist.
Yeah, and I bear in mind I was using it in a very black and white way as well. I think people who kind of do these things, it's not just a case that one thing happens. I think that this discrimination builds up over time and time, and they might start carrying it and attribute it to it once, and then a few days later something else happens, and then they
Mhm.
attribute, and it becomes reinforced within them as well. And that reinforcement of that kind of bias, which is what it is that reinforcement of that bias. That's what leads them to think that there is some genuine kind of power in this thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think because it's such a vague and such a well-used concept, like, it just, I think it permeates to the point where we use the concept of luck without even really realizing we're using the concept of luck. Like, you used it in an example earlier. It could be like mundane things, right? Like, oh, how lucky you caught me. I was just gonna go take a shower, but you rang a minute earlier than you could have, and I would have been unavailable to talk, or whatever. Or, oh, it's a good thing you caught me. I was just leaving. Now I can go back in the house and get whatever it is you're asking me to get, or whatever the case may be. We'll attribute the term luck to it. Like, I'll even do that. Like, oh, how lucky. Like, I'm so glad you called, right? Um, Without even really recognizing that what we're doing is reinforcing a bias that really makes no sense whatsoever. It's almost like luck has become synonymous with the term fortune. Like, oh, how fortunate that that happened. And even that, like, what does that even really mean, right? It just
Yeah.
means positive, like good, right?
You know what? I mean, one thing we don't do on this show, if you're new to this show, if you're new listener or watching for the first time, you won't know this. But one thing we say repeatedly is we don't do any research whatsoever.
Mhm.
And this is one episode that I would like to have actually sat down for a little bit and looked into luck and how
Yeah.
that kind of concept developed and was viewed in different societies in the past. Because I've no idea. I've genuinely no idea.
Yeah, I'm curious about that and all the different ways we can explore luck. Like while you were just talking, I was thinking, okay, so let's say you have a person, let's say dice rolls, okay, and you have a person who can consistently roll better dice. Like I play Yahtzee with my family when we do family gatherings, and my sister-in-law is freaking good at Yahtzee. How are you good at Yahtzee? Like it's random, right? How are you good at rolling dice? And there's an answer to that in terms of strategy, like which dice you keep and which ones you re-roll. But just getting good rolls consistently, there does seem to be like this sort of thing that happens where some people just seem to be able to produce something, not something that has anything to do with skill or knowledge. It's just random. Like, oh, that person gets uh dice rolls a specific way, or that person just happens to get like I'm trying to think like out in public, maybe people respond to them a certain way consistently. And there could be lots of things that go into that, but there's this sort of feeling that certain things happen more often with certain people, right? That you'd associate it with luck. Well, that person's just lucky, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me wonder when you talk about studying that, could we even break down all of the different I don't know, bits and pieces that go into any given situation that would make one person appear to be more lucky than another? Like what are the odds X will happen consistently to X person? Well, when you start to measure it, there's gonna be the people that it happens less often to, the people that it happens like on an average to, and then there's the
Yeah.
people that happens more to. And it's just gonna happen, period, based on blind statistics. And so if you're that in that pool of people that it just happens to happen more often to, there's no driving force behind that. It's just you're that you belong to that pool of people statistically. But people would call it blind luck or dumb luck, right?
And how would you assess that? I'm not sure. It. We're talking about such a wide range of things.
Right.
When I was young and fit and could move without breathing heavily after two steps.
Yeah.
I was a sportsman in my younger days, and I was pretty good. I was pretty damn good at what I did, and
Yeah.
I didn't consider that it was luck that carried me through. And yet, I see people going into the ring in this day, well, throughout like history,
Yeah.
and they'll go into the ring and they'll kiss the cross or whatever symbol they have of luck before they compete, before they fight, which was
Hmm.
my discipline, or they compete in other areas in football or whatever they're doing, and they'll come out with a good result, and they'll feel lucky that they've got that result, or they'll thank an external force for giving them that result, and
Hmm.
it's their hard work that's got them there. It's nothing. It's their hard work and dedication. It's not, and the team and the people around them and their hard work and dedication.
Or
It's
it's
not a
just their
matter of
mental
blind
state.
chance. Yeah,
Right. And you talk about like, say, doing something that you think brings you luck, whether it's like kissing a religious symbol or doing a routine or wearing the same nasty ass pair of dirty socks or whatever the case may be. Um, That it so I was thinking of, beginner's luck while you were talking, and I have really good, quote, unquote, "beginner's luck." And it blows people away sometimes, like, "Oh my gosh, you're really good at this right off the bat." But then the more I start to learn it, the more I start to master it, the more I start to screw up, and the more I'll make mistakes, and then suddenly I become sort of below average, and then I work up to average, and then I'm good again, right? But it's this curve of me, like, start really good and then go crash down and then build back up again. But people are amazed in that stage. They're like, "Wow, you have really good beginner's luck." What it is for me, and what I suspect that it is in the case of like, say, talismans or rituals or whatever, is relaxed. I'm relaxed. I don't have any expectations of what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have any expectations of how good I should perform. I'm just going in and doing something for the first time. I'm not overthinking it. So the first year that I did a football pool, for example, I knew nothing about football, and my boyfriend at the time ranked all the different rankings of the monsters on the game I was playing. He ranked all the teams according to that, and so each week I would pick the teams that I thought were going to win based on that ranking, and I got third, and I knew nothing about football or the teams or who was injured or anything, and it's because I wasn't giving a damn. I wasn't overthinking it, and so I think a lot of what we would call luck really does come down to results can actually improve when you're not thinking about it or you're not worried about it.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about with red light syndrome earlier in when kind of musicianship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, we're coming up to a commercial break, and
Mhm.
I want to explore when we come back from the commercial break. I want to talk about a little bit about the different kind of things attributors look at. Like you mentioned rabbit's feet earlier, and go
Yeah.
down that avenue and kind of look at some of the specific things that people consider to be lucky things.
Yeah.
So
Let's do
let's
that.
nip off to commercials, and when we come back, we'll talk about that.
Sounds good.
So we are I forgot the name of the show, Skeptic
What show are we on
Hangout.
again?
we're Skeptic Hangout, and we have got a Facebook group that we love interacting with, the Facebook discussion group. And we say it every week, we want you to go there. We want you to pull what we say apart. If you found
Mhm.
fault with anything myself or Laura have said this episode, go and put it in there. When we want to hear it, we're not going to be like, we're not the kind of group who's going to like be hostile towards criticism. We're quite the opposite. If you've got constructive criticism, if you've got a knowledge base that you can pick apart what we've said,
Ooh,
go in there and tell
absolutely.
us
Yeah.
exactly where we've gone wrong, because that's where we're going to learn from. And we love that stuff. And that group is amazing for conversations.
Or if we say something and it just spurs a question or conversation, or you just want to take it a little bit further, we have some really good discussions on Facebook too, where people, and it's not just us interacting with whatever the question or whatever the statement is. Everybody on the page kind of gets involved, and people start pinging off each other, and the conversations go in all sorts of different directions. So
Yeah.
um, absolutely, we want to be corrected, but also we only have the 40 minutes to just quickly like pop out a quick podcast, and we barely scratch the surface of like all of the subjects that we do. And like Richard said earlier, we do them unresearched. So there's so much more to think about when you have different minds that have different perspectives or different takes. There's a lot more that we can do in terms of this conversation on the Facebook page. So if you're listening to us and you're not aware of it, or you haven't been on it yet, or you just aren't sure whether or not you want to, go check it out and see if it's something you'd be interested in. Because the conversations there, really, I think that they really take whatever our topics are sort of the next level.
And if you're kind of averse to Facebook in general, just join up and join our group and fuck everybody else.
You don't gotta have no Facebook friends.
You don't need Facebook friends. No, we'll be your friends. We'll be your family. Come into our family.
It's getting a little bit cultish up in here. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable.
And if you
Um,
want that cult to continue, what you can do is support us through our merchandise. It's in all seriousness, we've got a great merchandise store. There's some pretty good stuff in there, and this is another thing we say on an almost weekly basis. It's fantastic because it's unlike a lot of merchandise stores. You're not like limited to, look, this is a T-shirt you can buy, or this is, you can choose the slogan that we've like
Loaded.
Laura, yeah, preloaded, and yeah, you can choose the product that it goes on, and you can change the colors around, and you can cater for yourself. You can make it your thing. So you're not going to see a million people walking around with Skeptic Hangout t-shirts on that all look like yours.
I mean, you could if you shared them all with all your friends and got people to buy them. No, yeah, yeah, the merch store is our only way right now of making any sort of revenue, and right now what that would go toward is just buying better software for doing our recordings. Right now we're very limited to free software for everything that we do. So yeah, it's not a very lucrative thing, but if you want like a mug to show off at the office to show people, here's my
Yeah.
skeptic mug, or our brains are shit, or whatever the case may be.
And it's great because, and it is a talking point. I mean, I've got if you turn my phone on, we're on there.
I like
And
it.
when that comes on at work, people ask me what it is. Like, what's that you've got on your phone? And it is a talking point. It gets people interested. So if you're interested in spreading the word about us, go on that merch store and get yourself a mug, as Laura says, or a t-shirt. I want to see somebody in a country other than my own wearing some Skeptic
Yes.
Hangout merchandise, and I so want people to put stuff on the Facebook group and go up and put. I will go as far as to say that the first person I'm going to make this declaration now, the first person I see in a country that is not my own country, posting a picture in public with themselves with some of our merchandise on, I will pay for and send you a t-shirt. We've got a link tree as well. If you want to find us on Facebook, or I don't know whether you're listening to us now on one of the podcast platforms or watching us on YouTube. But if you find our link, go onto our link tree, you can find us on every platform you like. That link tree is really helpful because it allows you to view us in all the different places you can find us.
Yeah, so check us out there at linktree/skeptic hangout. In the meantime, let's head back to the show and get back into our juicy topic.
Yeah, so before the commercial break, I asked about what kind of different like symbols of luck people either carried with them or people regularly practice. So, and I'm sure there are hundreds, but what are the most prominent ones you've come across? You mentioned
Yeah.
lucky rabbit feet
So
earlier.
yeah, we've already knocked the rabbit foot out of the park. So for me, what I've noticed
This
is,
rabbit's getting a rough time today.
no, poor guy. No, but so what I've noticed the most are like coin related stuff, like lucky penny, lucky coin, little round like baubles like that you can wear as like a necklace or jewelry or something. But they tend to be like kind of like flat, round, kind of coin shaped objects. So that's what I encounter a lot. But I think you're right when you say there actually you're very wrong when you say there could be hundreds. I think like anything can be considered lucky this or lucky that. Burn an incense that's a specific smell and you can call it a lucky incense, right? Or like people talk about luck like oh there's this thing that you can do and they do it in different ways, whether it's releasing intentions or releasing negative emotions, but also just for luck is like putting something that you want on a piece of paper and then burning it, right? That can be considered a way of generating sort of like positive energy or luck. I have a tendency to lump in religious talismans with this luck thing, but I understand that from a religious perspective, that's a big no-no. Like I know that I've heard a lot of religious people say luck has nothing to do with it, right? It's all about Jesus, right? Or whatever the case may be. So from my perspective, they're synonymous. Like your what would Jesus do bracelet or your cross necklace or whatever. To me, it's the same thing. You're using it as a talisman of luck, but you're just attributing that to a higher being that would be imbuing it or supplying it or whatever the case may be. So from an outside perspective, it's very hard to see where luck differs from like a religious, like a God claim. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, what are things that are specific, maybe specific just to luck and don't have anything to do with religion?
Didn't know what it's funny you should ask that, because when I asked that question, I automatically went to thinking not about good luck, but to bad luck.
Ooh, like broken
And
mirrors or like
like stepping on cracks in the pavement and walking under ladders and
yeah.
those kinds of things.
So is that luck or superstition? So and I think those two are kind of maybe a little bit interconnected or related. But I would almost see like walking under a ladder as being a superstition, but then you're totally right because then the outcome is bad luck. So it involves kind of both. So then we didn't really talk about bad luck in the first half. Maybe we can spend the
No.
last few minutes talking about bad luck. Like I think a lot of the applications of good luck or a lot of the conversations we had, you just take it and reverse it from good to bad, and now you've had the conversation. But what are your thoughts on bad luck?
Pretty much the same as my thoughts on good luck. Is a load of bullshit.
Oh, I mean that goes without saying.
I mean, I don't know. I think it works in pretty much the same way. Let's take the example I gave earlier, where you fall down and you break your arm and you miss a car coming. A car comes and misses your head by an inch because you've fallen down and broken your arm. You could view that either way.
I mean, you could.
You
Yeah.
could view it as good luck because you've not had your head crushed. But if you're discriminating in such a way that you're not really thinking about that, you could say, if you may have a major tennis tournament the day after, and
Oh, right. And now you
not
can't
missing your
compete.
head
Yeah.
may be inconsequential to you, but the fact that you've broken your arm might be massive.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
and
you
there's
could be
also the squeezing as much negativity or positivity in other cases, like on the other side, but squeezing as much negativity out of it. So it'd be like, not only did I fall and broke my arm, but I almost died. Right. And so you take that almost something happening to you and you turn that into something bad. And now you have even more negative reinforcement, right? For bad luck. Rather than
I'm
seeing
going
the
to
holy crap, I could have died and didn't, right?
I'm going to endeavor to spend at least one day of my life squeezing as much negativity out of everything that I can.
So I tend to be an eternal optimist and I tend to see a lot of positivity in things or a lot of silver lining or so where and this is where I'm kind of hoping to go for the last few minutes is when things seem to happen negatively to people, the optimist in me, when I can't deny that a lot of negative things happen to them over and over and over again, will tend to see where the fault is. Like, well, from my perspective, all things being generally good, you're bringing a lot of this negativity on yourself because A, B, C, and D. And so we talked about the positive luck, right? And how people can bring positive luck onto themselves either by, hard work or diligence or their own efforts. But it could also be that good luck mindset of if I kiss this before I go into the fight, I'm going to do better. Therefore, I had good luck during the fight because I did this thing. It's still psychological and you're bringing the positivity onto yourself. Um, I tend to see a lot of bad luck as self-imposed. Like people, well, you could have done this differently, or you did that when you knew you shouldn't have, or whatever. What were you doing dancing in the streets that you could have tripped and fallen down and damn near got yourself run over? Like there's a little bit of fault there. So what are your thoughts on that? Like negativity or bad luck being in some regards or some circumstances self-imposed?
I have a daughter who runs around, and we've got kind of laminate floors in our living room, which are, which are the greatest. When you apply socks to them, it's like having an ice rink. And my daughter falls down on an almost daily basis by enthusiastically running
Yeah.
along the floor. This very computer desk that I'm looking at right now, I came a cropper on it one day and chinned the corner of the
I
computer desk
remember.
off.
I remember that.
So yeah, you can apply bad luck to things, and you can attribute it to your kind of. I wouldn't attribute that to bad luck. I'd just say it was to the floor being, the nature of the floor and the socks on the floor and the general enthusiasm of the people who live in my house. But some
Yeah.
people would consider that bad luck. If you put your face through the corner of a computer desk, I can certainly see how some people would attribute that to being very unlucky.
Yeah, especially if it's hard to determine what the actual cause was. If you're like, "Oh, I was walking down the street and like it was raining and a car drove by and splashed the puddle up at me and then like 2 blocks later I realized I left my cell phone at the restaurant and like you mean it could be like this chain of events where you can't really pinpoint exactly where all these things are coming from or why um or at least not all of them together. Maybe individually, well that leaving your cell phone was because you were in a rush or whatever or but then there's more bad luck right there. Why were you in a rush? Oh, because I was running late, and that's more bad luck, right? I think when people tend to see it as luck is when it's kind of like, and this is good or bad luck, is when it sort of all compiles together, but there's no connection between all those individual things happening other than this sort of tenuous, like it just happened to be all these good things that happened, or it happened to be all these bad things that
Yeah,
happened, therefore bad luck. And
that discrimination. Yeah,
yeah, and I think it goes back just to statistics. You're gonna have days with various good things happening, various bad things happening, and there's gonna be days where more good things or more bad things call your attention to the fact that it keeps happening, right?
yeah,
And that's where you start to attribute it to, well, it's just luck, or it's just the luck of the draw, or I'm just having a day of bad luck, or whatever. Because
yeah.
there's There's just no clear why.
No, and that cumulative psychological effect has a massive impact on us.
Mhm.
And whether it, as you say, whether it's good or bad, we talked a little bit about the good aspects of it earlier on, but whether it's good or bad, it has a massive impact on us. And I don't think, although we do, I don't think we're as inclined with a single event to say that was good luck or that was bad luck. I think it's that reinforced kind
Mhm.
of attributable thing that makes us think I am lucky or I am unlucky. Or
Mhm.
let me scratch that a little bit. We can have single events where we consider that's good luck or that's bad luck. But when you start getting into the mindset of I am a lucky person
There you
or I
go.
am an unlucky person,
Yeah.
that's brought on by this like what
Cumulative.
is wrong with me? That's the one. The I'm going to learn to speak one day, and I will do it properly, Mama. I promise.
Don't make promises that you don't intend to keep.
Yeah, that affects that builds up and builds up over time. And notice how I avoided saying it. Then. That effect that builds up over time
Yeah.
and reinforces thing is what I think makes us think that we are an unlucky person or a lucky person.
I absolutely agree. And I know we're coming up to the end of the show and we got to end it here, but I want to end it on a question for you. And I have an answer to you. I'll give real quickly, but luck. So we talk a lot about trying to be skeptical and not trying to make mistakes of falling into sort of mental pitfalls with our thinking or with our speaking. Do you think that using it in a colloquial sense of like, oh, that was lucky or whatever, the term luck, yes, in your vocabulary or no? Is it something that you're okay with using just colloquially, or is it something that you try to avoid?
I'm okay with using it. I tend not to use it, I don't think, but I've no problem against it. I'm pretty easygoing with stuff like that. Look, human brains are shit. That's a
we
be all and
we've
end all of
established
it.
that.
That we we're, we're we have pattern recognition brains, and that being the case, a lot of the things that happen in life that aren't actually patterns tend to get confused into things that haven't actually happened or we misremember things or things of that nature. And I'm aware of that, and everybody does it. And this is another thing that I keep repeating constantly, that it's not just a case of the skeptic and the rest of the people.
Mhm.
You know, we're as prone to bad thinking as anybody else, and we fall prey
Perhaps
to it
even
every
more
day.
so if you think of
Yeah.
Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, I fall prey to it, and I try to be aware of it because I've done a lot of years of meditation, which has kind of honed my brain to kind of a little bit of awareness, and
Mhm.
I tend to try and be aware of things, uh, and I notice it on with myself at least 2 or 3 times a week, at least, where my brain has made a mistake
Ah.
but I catch myself
And you
doing
catch
it,
it. Yeah, that's
and I'm
good.
sure there were plenty of times where I don't catch it as well, and that's the case. But we've got crap brains. That's the be all and end all of it, and I've no problem with just saying, no, that was lucky or that was unlucky in a very
Mhm.
colloquial sense. Some people, some skeptics, some gatekeeping skeptics
Mhm.
like to like to pretend I think that they're immune
Mm,
to making these kinds of mistakes and that you shouldn't use things like that. I think
right.
as long as you're doing it contextually and as long as you're able to explain that you don't actually believe that carrying a lucky rabbit's foot around with it, I don't think there's any harm in it. Personally, it's
Yep.
someone else might have a different opinion, but
Yep. No, I
I'm
agree
fine
with you
with it.
100%. I'm not all for language policing, especially my own, because it can become really, really stifling and limiting. And there's so many other ways in which we have to police our language in order to trying to, fit into society or not offend people. I'm an overly sensitive person. And so I spend a lot of time accidentally saying offensive things because in my brain I'm like, don't say it this way, don't say it this way, don't say it this way. And I end up saying it that way. And so it can be very difficult to try and have the most precise language possible So I'm a big fan of not policing language, of being loose with it and being willing to ask like, well, what did you mean by that and stuff like that. And I don't
Although
mean
to
go out. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to push back against that a little bit, and I'm sure you agree with me here, by the way, but I just want to put this out for clarification. That doesn't mean that in some cases you shouldn't be aware of what you're saying and you shouldn't be careful of
Right.
language, because in some occasions it's vitally important that you get language right.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say is there's enough of that. There's enough times where you just really have to be careful of what you say because there are really implications to it. And that can be really, really difficult. And so to try and police everything you say or be ultra precise can just become really, really difficult. And so for me, I don't mind colloquial uses of a lot of different words. I don't mind even saying things like "oh, thank God," right? Um, and that's
I
just
say
it's
that
just it's
all the
just an
time.
artifact. Yeah, it's just an artifact of my culture and my past and stuff like that. And it doesn't really have any meaning for me. And I would be happy to explain it to anyone who's like, "Oh, I thought you weren't religious." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's just, it's one of those phrases that's everywhere, right?" And so you pick it up. And I see luck as the same thing. I don't see it as having any significant meaning. I just see it as being that thing that you say, like, "Hey, how's it going today?" when you really don't care how it's going with that particular individual. You just say it. Having said that, though, I think that there is a lot to be said for the exploration of why are things actually happening, right? If you actually have a lot of good things happening, reflecting on why, and if you actually have a lot of bad things happening, reflecting on why, versus just being dismissive and saying it's good or bad luck. So I think that there's definitely a little give and take there. But this would be a great thing to take to the Facebook page before we say goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly would. And you know what? I've really enjoyed this episode. And
Yeah.
this is one of those where I wasn't sure where this was going to go, or even if we'd have anything to talk about. Because, what's luck?
So I want to put this out to the Facebook group, or anyone listening. If you're not on Facebook, get on Facebook and join us in order to answer this question. Same question to you guys. Do you think luck is something? A, do you think it exists or doesn't exist? If you think it exists in a real way, I'd love to hear about that and what your thoughts are on that. Maybe what some of your evidences are, reasonings behind that. How do you justify it? If you don't think it exists, then the same question I asked to Richard, is it something that you use colloquially? Like, are you okay or comfortable saying like, "Oh, that was lucky," or "Oh, what good luck?" Or, is it something that you think is maybe inappropriate or shouldn't be used in conversation if it's not actually believed in? What are your thoughts on that? So, that is what we have for this week. I look forward to the Facebook discussion. This has been super fun. Catch you all next time.
See
Bye.
you later. Goodbye.